Joining me now is Tom Fitton, the president of Judicial Watch. Tom, good to see you. So it appears the ambassador was a lot more familiar with Burisma than she said under oath, right?
Well, that's exactly right. She had a former ambassadorial colleague of hers who was working for the McCain Institute, of all places, run an idea about funding a training for prosecutors in Ukraine, training funded by Burisma.
Ay, ay, ay.
And the ambassador responded appropriately. That's probably not a good idea. And her former colleague writes back, you know, I'm following your sage advice. We won't do it. And compare and contrast that with her testimony that she didn't know much about Burisma. And it further confirms, because we already have other evidence of this, that the Obama State Department knew full well about Burisma. Mm-hmm. And other information shows they knew the full well about Hunter Biden's involvement in this. So remember, this email traffic's going on while Biden's involved in Burisma directly. And, you know, and so President Trump gets impeached for asking about Biden corruption. The DOJ knew about it at the time in the sense that they were investigating Biden. We're now here, at least to Hunter Biden. They suppressed it through the election, in addition to through the impeachment, and we get information given to us late in the game after the election by both the State Department and now, I guess, the FBI and Justice Department, that the Biden corruption story is as real as we've been saying.
Well, Tom, does the DOJ have any interest at all to find out whether a former ambassador was lying under oath about all this?
They have zero interest in investigating any of that. There's all sorts of testimony that should have been investigated. The handling of the classified phone calls between the president and the Ukrainian official, the leaking of that, the sharing of that with others improperly should have been investigated. The Justice Department and the FBI have been AWOL in virtually all the crimes in which President Trump is a victim.
Well, meanwhile, we don't know exactly what they're investigating with regard to Hunter Biden's relationship with a Chinese company that was very closely related to Chinese intelligence that apparently was doing money laundering or may have been doing money laundering. That's why the company ultimately failed, because it was found out about that. What can you tell us? What have you figured out that the DOJ, we know, by the way, that they've had Hunter Biden's computer, the one that was left behind at the PC company, for over a year. Why has there been nothing about that?
You know, they say they weren't investigating him or they were doing it. They weren't doing overt acts before the election because there's some rule that actually doesn't exist, that they're not supposed to do overt acts in a way that impacts an election, and that somehow covers the entire Biden family.
And of course, they did exactly the opposite in 2016, right?
Well, exactly. They were leaking the investigation to the Clinton campaign. Look, I don't believe the FBI was ever doing a serious investigation. Anything they were doing, they were kind of forced into doing. And to the degree they were doing anything, it was because of the heroic actions of Rudy Giuliani that forced their hand. I don't think the president can depend on the FBI and the DOJ to do anything these days, especially on these politically sensitive topics. And he should appoint a special prosecutor for Joe Biden. As far as I'm concerned, given the evidence, and I've talked with Rudy Giuliani about this in a separate interview, you know, he's highlighted there's more than enough evidence to justify an indictment already against Joe Biden, given the documentary and witness testimony that's already been out there.
Well, yeah, you mentioned the desire to have a special counsel. I mean, isn't that what you got in John Durham, who is about the slowest prosecutor in the West?
Well, you have someone who's outside the Justice Department do it. It should answer to the White House, not the Justice Department, which is compromised.
Who would you choose?
I mean, someone like Rudy Giuliani, who is not afraid.
Yeah.
Who's not afraid. And someone who's less interested in protecting.
The problem is the last great prosecutor that I can remember, in fact, I mentioned him to John Solomon just a moment ago, was Bob Morgenthau, who was the DA in New York for many years. And he followed a track wherever it led. He didn't care what political party it happened to lead to. There just aren't that many people like that. The whole justice system has been so corrupted by what's happened at the DOJ over the past 12 years, really. that it's very difficult to find an independent prosecutor out there.
Yeah, the concern I have is that Obama ruined the Justice Department. The FBI was ruined by Mueller and Comey, and we still haven't recovered. And so they're not reliable entities in the meantime. And that's the rule of law crisis we face.
Yeah.
Nothing's been done about the Obamagate corruption, the worst corruption scandal in American history, practically speaking. And Biden was protected by these agencies while they were attacking Trump.
So what happens now? What happens if Joe Biden takes over in January? What happens to the Justice Department?
I think they'll go through the motions in investigating his family, and Biden will be free and clear.
Okay, so he won't have to pull out a pardon for his son or himself.
Yeah, I don't even think he'll have to exercise it.
All right. Tom Fitton, we're, again, like I said to John Solomon, we're glad we have independent journalists and investigators out there to look into the truth, because apparently we're not going to get it from DOJ. We thank you for coming on, Tom. Good to see you.